Hello, it's Lion here with Hobbies Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another One Piece video. Today we're going to be ranking the sagas. There's 10 of them, and we're going to rank them in a top 10 list, starting from the least favorite to the best one, according to my personal preference. Of course, there's differences for everyone, so everyone's going to have a different list, but I do think that there's more or less 2 or 3 here that are going to be in the same spot for just about everyone, right? So let's get into it. Let's start with the worst one, the one I like the least, Thriller Bark. I know nothing happened. I know it's really good. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. But the vast majority of the time, I don't give a shit about Moria. I don't give a shit about what's happening on there. I just don't like this story. And I think it's just because I'm not really interested in the gothic elements that are existing in this part of the story. And broadly speaking, besides getting Brook, and besides the last 2 or 3 chapters where Zoro shows off and shows that he's the best, vice captain ever, there really isn't too much that is interesting or that is meaningful, in my opinion. There's mentions of Wano and stuff like that, and there is a reason why we went there and why we had to get out beyond just getting Brook, but something about it just doesn't resonate with me, and I just don't like it. Like, there's a lot of things here that you can argue about, right? Like, they beat giants, so it's meaningful. They beat a dark version of Luffy because Luffy could turn into Moria if everyone died before he was ready, which basically ends up happening almost immediately when, they all get destroyed at Sabaody, and we could have seen what that was, right? Stuff like that. Like, I understand there's definitely meaningful, deep things, but the story just didn't work for me, and I didn't really enjoy it, right? So there you go. Number 9, again, another one that, actually, this one might be controversial. A lot of people seem to like this one retroactively now that Wano and stuff after Wano has happened, and that would be Skypiea. I just don't like it. I don't really enjoy it. I don't think Enel is a good character. I like his, crazy Slim Shady-esque look, and also the fact that he's, a megalomaniac, but that part of the story was only good for the world-building aspect, and I didn't really enjoy the action or the plotline that happened in it, right? So it is what it is. Sky Island is just not for me. I didn't really like it. But I also don't really have, a hatred or a dislike for it the same way I do for Thriller Bark. Hatred is a strong word. I don't really hate Thriller Bark. I just don't really like it. So, there you go. Number 8 is East Blue. East Blue is awesome. I really do like it, especially thinking back on it. There's so many things that happen in East Blue that are just so good, especially because we get to meet all the crew. But mostly it is just a prologue, right? So nothing really awesome happens until Arlong Park and Logtown, and at that point it's more like it's awesome because we're finally getting somewhere instead of it's awesome because it means something, right? So it's not the best, but it's also not bad, and it definitely beats out the other two just because it's the beginning of the series, right? So there you go. Number 7 is Fishman Island. I actually really enjoyed Fishman Island, which is kind of comparable to, or it's actually kind of weird because most people didn't seem to like it, but I really enjoyed it. I really like Shirahoshi. I don't think the characters, the bad guys, are that good, but I really enjoy Fishman Island for the sake of we clarify that our crew is strong and that they're awesome, and we get to see them body people left and right. Post, the time skip, we get to see them show off for the first time in a while, right? But also, just because I really enjoy the moments that they have together, and just the badassery that comes with it, but also, just the reaffirmation that they're good and that they're not shitty like other pirates. I think that was kind of important. Maybe not so much because we've always known that they're good compared to other pirates, but I found it to be really meaningful. And that whole scene where Luffy and Jinbei share blood is awesome. There's so much good stuff there. And, as an American, stuff about race and stuff like that is definitely a touchy subject. And it's interesting that it's handled so well in a fiction where, it's like dudes that are fish and humans, and it's just really, really well done. I just really like that. It's a way that I've not seen before, and that works really well. There's other stuff like this from Japan that tackles the same issues, like Kamen Rider Black Sun, but that didn't do it that well. Fishman Island is very nuanced and very interesting in how it deals with that, and also the cycle of hatred. So overall, Fishman Island is awesome. It's just really not as good as the other ones in this list, right? So there you go. That's number 7. Number 6 is Dressrosa. Honestly, I mentioned last week that I think Doflamingo is better than both Big Mom and Kaido, but I think the arc is less good. mostly because I feel like the fight at the end happens and it takes too long. And also just because I feel like ramification-wise, like meaningfulness-wise, Wano and Whole Cake win, like over Dressrosa. And so my enjoyment also is higher for those other two because of that like satisfaction of like, okay, this means something, right? But Dressrosa was really good. I really enjoyed the law backstory in Corazon and the introduction of the of Sword. I think it happens there when we learn about Corazon and you know what he was doing for the Marines. And we meet X-Drake there as well, I think, or X-Drake's dad. I don't remember. His name is Diaz Drake. I think we meet his dad. And what else? I really enjoy the green bit part. I really enjoy Leo and all of the other Tontadas a lot, actually. I really like them. I love Robin's outfit. Bartolomeo is hilarious. Like, there's so many good things about Dressrosa. But in terms of meaningfulness, the story, and also just enjoyment, I feel like they fall lower than the other ones. So, yeah, that's number 6. Number 5 is Whole Cake. Look, Sanji has never been my favorite character. I think I rank him in the lower half of the Straw Hats, if I remember correctly. Let me double check. Yeah, he's number 6 on my list of Straw Hats. But Whole Cake, the way that it deals with Sanji and all of the crazy shit that he's gone through is awesome, and it's nuanced, and it's good, and I love that Luffy is like, dude, you're amazing. Don't listen to this dumbass that's your dad. And also, the Germa are really interesting. Like, they're like Nazi Power Rangers, but they're also like the Empire from Star Wars, and as a Star Wars fan, like, that's awesome, right? Like, that's super cool. And I don't know, I just enjoyed it a lot. I also like that at the end, the big fight isn't like Sanji's gonna beat the shit out of Big Mom. It's Sanji has to cook, and cooking is the thing that saved him, basically, and the thing that has made him who he is, and I really like that. I think that's awesome. However, of course, Big Mom being a kaiju for, 60 chapters is not great, because I would have really liked to see Big Mom be a meaningful character in her own arc, but ultimately, the arc is about Sanji, not about Big Mom, so that makes sense, right? So overall, I think it's a really good arc, or saga, sorry, but it's not as good as the other stuff on the list. Number 4 is Wano. Now, initially, and honestly, I think overall still, I don't think Wano was that good because it like ramped up and it had super huge highs and Roof Piece and all of that stuff was awesome. But the ending was so lackluster and it was so shitty and so quick and stuff didn't happen the way I thought it would. And of course, that's my fault for having expectations that were never going to be met. But I feel like if you started this thing where you kind of basically made all of these characters have different things, right? Like Fisherman Island, you could classify as Nami's arc because she has to deal with Arlong again, or like the repercussions of Arlong, and she meets someone that's basically like Arlong, but worse. And then you could argue that Dressrosa is kind of like Robin's arc, to an extent. Honestly, not really. I think that one is a bit of a stretch. Or you could call it Usopp's arc because he becomes God Usopp. He becomes a brave warrior of the sea that has 8,000 followers in this arc. And Whole Cake is Sanji's. Wano should have definitely been Zoro's arc. And it just never got there. Like, Zoro had so much potential, so many things going on. He is a roaming samurai from East Blue. How the hell did he learn that culture out there, right? And why did he connect to Wano? And how did he do, how does Ryuma's passing on of the sword, affect him when he gets there and stuff like that? Like, a lot of these things that really should have been developed and meaningful, and then maybe, like, I'm not saying Zoro had to be the Prince of Wano or whatever, but, like, there should have been more to it, and I feel like it wasn't. Of course, he did get developments. He got Conqueror's Haki. He got a lot of cool stuff out of it, but if Fisherman Island was Nami's arc and Dressrosa was Usopp's and Whole Cake was Sanji's, why didn't Zoro get one? Like, I don't know. It just kind of sucks in that way, but it's fine overall. I really enjoyed it. Like, while I was reading it, I thought it was awesome. I did catch up to it, I did catch up to the story right at the end of Wano, so to me, Wano's always going to be special because of that, but I recognize that it really needed 20 or so more chapters to really finish off the story properly and kind of get us to see all of these things, like, Zoro going to Ryuma's grave, Zoro talking about his meeting with him and telling the Kazuki clan about it, and kind of like talking about the sword stuff, and mentioning Kuina or Tashigi, honestly, and his kind of like romancing situation that happened with Hiyori, and we should have seen Kiku go visit her brother's grave. And we should have seen, honestly, a lot more of the Red Scabbards die. We really should have seen that. And, Carrot should have joined the Straw Hats. Yamato, even though I don't really like that character all that much, should have joined the Straw Hats as well. There's a lot of stuff that could have happened, that should have happened in Wano, that just didn't. And that kind of drops the enjoyment a little bit for me. So it doesn't crack the top 3, which are basically my favorite of all time sagas. Like, it is what it is. That's just what they are. So let's get into that now. Number 3 is Alabasta. It is the arc that I fell in love with One Piece during. Well, that was a horrible way to say that. I fell in love with One Piece during Alabasta. I love Vivi. She's my favorite character, honestly. I didn't mention her in my 2 other videos because she's technically not a Straw Hat, even though she kind of is. And she is not from the post-time skip, even though she did show up in the Reverie, but that doesn't really count. So Alabasta is like peak One Piece for me. It is the best of the best of the best. Luffy's fight with Crocodile is awesome. The ramifications of that later on in Impel Down are awesome. Luffy and Vivi and their interactions, and the way that Vivi teaches Luffy to be humble sometimes, and that there's sometimes ways to end conflict without having to fight. And everything about Alabasta overall is amazing. It's wonderful, but it doesn't match the next 2 on the list, right? And number 2 would be Water 7, because I Want to Live, Robin is my favorite Straw Hat, is honestly tied with Vivi for favorite character in One Piece completely. And just that whole segment of story, the Going Merry, crying over a boat, Robin wanting to live, like everything about Water 7 is probably some of the best storytelling ever. And, if I fell in love with One Piece during Alabasta, I reiterated my love for One Piece during Water 7. I wanted to marry it, right? In a really weird analogy. Sorry, that was odd. Yeah, so Water 7 is amazing. But the peak of the peak of the peak of the peak of peak One Piece is definitely going to be the Marineford War. Honestly, I don't like Impel Down as much as I like the Summit War Saga, like Element, the Battle of the Best, or whatever it's called. But those 30 chapters of that story are amazing. Luffy going left and right and going crazy and forward and all over the place, standing in front of the admirals with a stupid piece of wood, and Whitebeard being like, oh, I like this kid, let's make sure that he is safe. And the fact that Doflamingo gives a badass speech. And, everything about the Summit War Saga is awesome. I love some parts of Impel Down quite a bit, actually, like Bonchan showing up, and, Crocodile being like, oh, Mugiwara, what are you going to do? Like, it's so cool. Like, everything about Summit War is awesome. I read it last year in December. No, 2 years ago in December. And it was honestly the, most awesome kind of Christmas gift I could have ever had, because it was just so cool, man. Like, the Summit War Saga is amazing. It is the best peak One Piece. And honestly, Wano, was supposed to be the second Summit War Saga, and it didn't reach that level of awesomeness. It was just not as good. And it's kind of sad, but also it is what it is. Oda was on his game. He was at the top of his peak at that time. He wrote that, and it was awesome and amazing and really, really wonderful. So there you go. Those are the sagas ranked. Let me know what your ranking is down below, and thank you guys very much for watching. And, see you guys later.